Hi, everybody. This is the Community Board 2 Human Services Committee meeting for January. We're not going to start just yet. It's 6:30. I'm going to give people a little bit more time to join, but I just wanted to turn on the meeting. And Eric, you have some people who you want to elevate. Let's see.
Sarah Negron.
All right, let me.
Pastor.
Okay.
Susan Setzer.
Yeah, Susan Setzer, I will just promote to panelist. And Sarah is in the other direction. Susanna, no, this direction, you dope. Sarah, Jesus, how many people?
Probably close the chat.
Close the chat.
Good idea.
Sarah Negron, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close the chat, it'll be easier.
Whoops.
Okay, how do I?
X, the X in the middle.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to do this?
Oh, my God. Yeah, why don't you do that?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if
That's
that
great.
works. Does that work?
Susan,
He has to be on
Sarah.
the thing that's sharing the screen.
Oh, do I put his persistent? No.
I'm going to elevate Sarah
This is not participants.
to panelist. Is there anyone else, Eric?
Yeah. He has to open it.
Oh, Mark, can you hit just on your computer, hit that open button? That way the timer will just be on the screen and we can all use the same timer.
This
You don't have to
one.
like hold up a phone.
This one.
Oh, no.
Shice, no. Now where am I?
You're on the phone left.
Just go back there.
Oh, my God.
You see, there's just that open.
Yes.
Just click that button.
And then hit the okay again.
Okay, but we don't need it
Okay.
now.
No, I know. It's just.
Okay. So can I close this? Do I hit the X to close it?
No, I think.
Zach is, are you controlling?
I'm controlling it.
Okay, so can you get rid of it? Hi, Susan. Susan Stetzer is
Oh,
the
yes.
district manager for Community Board 3, a neighboring community district. Close and also very different. I'm going to ignore that.
Right. I get to say hi to Susan too. Hi, Susan.
I am going to share my screen.
Your assistant, the one that's, what if you undo shutting?
And I'm going to share this one.
No, it's a different, your timer is not gonna tell. Maybe if she hides hers and you show yours.
Well, it's not.
Share.
Yeah. Outside.
Oh my God, what is wrong with me?
Okay, is everyone elevated who needs to be elevated?
Yeah, but now I can't get to the stupid Zoom.
Susan and Sarah.
Okay, so now I want to share. Screen I want to share.
You're sharing one already.
You are
Oh,
sharing.
there we are. Okay, that's what I wanted to do. Thank you. All right, I'm going to give it 2 more minutes. Actually, no, we can start. Let's start. We have a heavy agenda. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the January meeting of Community Board 2. This is the Human Services Committee meeting. We have one agenda topic tonight, which I will introduce to you, and then we'll go through how the run of show tonight. I'm going to share this slide. Yeah, in a second you'll see. So we have one agenda tonight, which is written up there, the presentation by Project Renewal on a plan for a homeless shelter for women at 27 West 10th Street. 11th Street. 10th Street is where I live. The program, we're going to do basic introductions, and then Project Renewal is going to share a presentation with us. We'll then take questions from, and while you're doing your presentation, I may ask questions along the way that I think are on people's minds. We'll invite questions then from our committee. And then we'll invite questions from members of our board who are not on our committee. I see Eddie, and I don't know if other people are participating online. And then we will open up to public session. Now, I anticipate a lot of people tonight, so I would ask, we are going to keep comments to 1 minute. Unless we find that we really have very few people who want to talk, we are going to, wait, this is the, yeah, we're going to have 1 minute for remarks. So please prepare for it. And we're going to use a timer. And the aim of this is to get through as many as we can. I wanted you to know about the chat. I don't use the chat very much. We use it only for information, to share information. You know what? I don't know where anything on my screen is, but whatever. All right, so the chat, don't have side conversations in the chat. Please be respectful. We use the chat primarily for if you need to share information like an article or, you know, a phone number. I would like not to have sideline conversations in the chat. Sometimes the chat ends up being a place where people say really nasty things and have a whole side conversation. I'd like that not to happen. And also you should know that those of us running the meeting are not going to have a lot of opportunity to look at the chat because we're going to have a lot going on in the room and online. And that is really.
Susanna, can I just add just a quick?
Please.
Because there are a lot of people, I think, hoping to speak. Let's use the chat just to put in the speaker list. So when we get to that point of the meeting, we'll use it just so people can see their relative order that we'll do in batches.
That's fine. Now, how can I get rid of sharing my screen?
There should be a red button.
Oh, stop share. Okay. See, you think that I might have a little bit more technical expertise after all this time? Okay, so let's begin with introductions. First, our committee. I'm Susanna Aaron. I'm the chair of the Human Services Committee of Community Board 2. Let's just go around the room. Janet?
Janet Liff, full board member and member of this committee.
Arturo Fernandez, full board member and also committee member.
Zachary Kazaz is also on the full board and a member of this committee.
Ryder Kessler, same deal.
Rachel Yermolinsky, a public member.
Keen Berger, full board member and member of this committee.
Is there anyone, is Ivy online? Does anyone see?
I don't see her.
Okay, and I haven't seen Emma. Who I think.
Emma's on her
She's
way.
on her way.
Oh, okay, terrific. And now let's introduce our guests. We have two guests here from the Department of Homeless Services. Can you guys introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Jamar Hooks, Deputy Commissioner for Intergovernmental and Legislative Affairs with the Department of Social Services, which includes the Department of Homeless Services and the Human Resources Administration.
So what's your name again?
Jamar Hooks.
Jamar. Thank you.
I'm Tracy Bakar. Jamar is my boss. So I'm the Manhattan Borough Director for Community Boards 1 through 6 in Manhattan for Intergovernmental Legislative Affairs with Department of Homeless Services and Social Services.
Great. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself and your team?
Sure. I'm Eric Rosenbaum. I'm the president and CEO of Project Renewal. And I am joined by Sarah Negron, who is one of our vice presidents of programs and will have responsibility and oversight for this shelter.
And also I want to introduce Susan Stetzer, who is the district manager for Community Board 3. She's here because Project Renewal already has a project in Community Board 3. And so at some point, we're going to try to get to her earlier than later, but we just want to hear, like, you know, the experience of working with Project Renewal as an operator. That's kind of important because none of us has. Do I need to give any background? Yes, I'm going to give a little bit of background. This project came to us in 2020. And at the time, we were kind of overwhelmed with an outpouring of support that showed up. We are not, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Department of Homeless Services does not ask us for a resolution. Unlike things like state liquor licenses or street activities or zoning issues, the community board does not, we are notified, but we are not asked to produce a resolution. In that case, 2020, we did produce a resolution. And the reason that I did it, I didn't want to set a precedent, but I did want to, I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity that we had for our district, which has no shelters. Now we have one, which had no shelters, no public housing. It's largely white. It's very affluent. We have very high real estate values. It was a wonderful opportunity to be able to say this community has compassion. So we did that, but that should not be considered a precedent. We don't need to have a resolution. And I think that the most important outcome of this meeting will be to pull out a lot of details address a lot of concerns that people have about it and get a lot of information about it. And then we'll have, so after we go with the public session, we will break into business session. And what that means is everyone is welcome to stay and listen, but we will no longer entertain public comment. We will talk amongst ourselves as a committee and decide what we want to do. So 6:40, let's get to it.
Okay, thank you all for inviting us to speak and give you an update on this project. As you said, we came before the committee in 2020 to describe the project, which was at that point not yet fully formed. So we were still designing what it was going to be. Subsequent to that point in time, the landlord, we have executed a lease with the landlord, which will commence upon opening of the shelter. The city has registered a contract, a human services contract for the shelter, which includes an operating budget for Project Renewal and rent for the landlord. And the landlord has secured permits from the Department of Buildings and from the fire department for the renovations that he is doing to get the shelter ready.
So wait, before you go on, so just tell me how this works. The city's contract is with you.
Yes.
And you have your own contract with the landlord,
We have
the
a
owner of
lease.
the property, you have a lease. And you don't begin to pay that lease until you're up and running? Got it. But so who is paying for the actual build out of the site?
The landlord is.
The landlord pays for the site, okay. Okay. And how long is your contract with the city?
It's a typical human services contract, which means 5 years initially and then 4 one-year renewals before the whole contract comes up for renewal. I got that right, didn't I? Yeah.
I can't talk to you now, Asa.
And then that seems like such a short period of time.
Yes.
So,
In the
but it's the
refrigerator.
idea that it will be continuously renewed for 20, 30, 40, whatever. And if you're not a good operator, then they would bring in a new operator, is that?
And the city has the right to terminate their contract with us at any point in time if we're not performing.
Okay, I'll try, I'm gonna interrupt you a lot, so I apologize, but
Okay.
I hope I don't break the rhythm.
I can tell you a little bit about what the renovations are that the landlord is doing inside the building. And then I'll say a little bit about Project Renewal. And then I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who will talk about the staffing and the program and the activities that will occur in the shelter and the population will be serving. So let me start with an introduction of Project Renewal. We have been in existence since 1967, so I think that makes 57 years. We actually got our start in the Bowery with an innovative program that helped individuals who are suffering from alcohol abuse recover without requiring jail or hospitalization. The city took notice of that program, which was successful, and asked Project Renewal to open the very first shelter for homeless individuals that was contracted to a nonprofit provider. Since that time, we've grown substantially. We operate 7 shelters throughout the city, all for single individuals. One of them is the city's only shelter for LGBTQ young adults called Marcia's House up in the Bronx. We have about 900 beds across all of those shelters. And I'm very proud to say that last year we placed 347 people from shelters into permanent housing. And 0 of them have returned back into the shelter system.
30%?
It's actually 15% of the total population because there's turnover.
Got it.
But in addition to the shelter that we provide, we're also a developer and operator of permanent and transitional housing, supported housing. We have developed 7 permanent and transitional housing buildings over the last 30 some years. The distinction between shelter, transitional, and permanent housing is probably relevant. Shelter is intended, the people living in shelter do not have a lease. Our goal is to get them into an apartment where they will have a lease. Our transitional housing is licensed by the State Office of Mental Health. It is intended to be, let's say, 2 to 3 years for people with very, very high needs. And we work intensively with people to get them ready for the point where they would be able to function and live in most likely permanent supported housing. Permanent supported housing, the tenants have leases. They are the proper tenants of their apartments. But we have on-site services because the residents in supported housing usually have a diagnosis of mental illness or some type of substance use disorder, and require ongoing support and services. We're also a federally qualified health center, which means that we operate licensed clinics. Some are embedded inside our shelters and some operate in mobile medical vans. We provide primary care, psychiatry, substance use treatment. We operate the city's only dental clinic for homeless individuals. And we're connected to a variety of other specialties as well. We have about 200 staff in our FQHC. And we're a workforce development agency. So we have several programs that are specifically targeted at bringing individuals who have an experience of homelessness or mental illness or substance use disorder, working with them so that they can be gainfully employed. And one of those programs is called Next Step, and it actually works with people who are living in shelter, who have lived experience that actually makes them makes them really good employees for working in a shelter. And I'm very proud to say that almost 15% of our own frontline workforce are graduates of our workforce program. And those individuals have an average tenure with us of 3 years. They have an average wage gain of almost $9,000 a year, which is really a proof point of the success of the program. We operate a culinary arts training program since 1995. We've trained 107 cohorts of individuals to work in food service, and we actually operate a catering company called CB2 Kitchens. Some of that is institutional food, so we are a provider of food to shelters throughout the city, but it's also an event catering business. It does weddings and bar mitzvahs and corporate lunches, and it employs, again, some of the graduates of our workforce development program. We are just starting on Monday a brand new program in partnership with New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation. It's called CareCorps. There are over 350 vacancies today in health and city, in the hospitals at HHC for what is called the psychiatric technician. One of the biggest barriers to opening the psychiatric beds that are so desperately needed in the city is that there aren't qualified employees to actually work the floors of the psychiatric units. And so we were approached, we're actually supporting this with philanthropic dollars, a brand new program that leads directly into union jobs as psychiatric techs in the health and hospital system, with a direct career path towards higher level roles in that hospital system. And the first cohort of that pilot is going to start on Monday. We served over 1,000 people in our workforce development programs this past year. We operate the city's only support and connection center in East Harlem. It's a very small 16-bed facility with 24-hour nursing, on-site psychiatry, peer-led counseling. And in the past year, that little 16-bed facility has helped 800 unique individuals, most of whom were street homeless, by providing intensive 5 to 10 day stays that lead to a placement in a safe haven or a shelter, or in some cases, even a direct placement into housing. And I say all of this to make the point that we provide a really wide array of licensed professional services that are all geared towards the population that we serve, which is individuals who have experienced chronic homelessness. And some of the other traumas that lead to that or are affiliated with it. I think we are big enough to be able to provide that critical mass of services in a meaningful way, and small enough that our staff actually know each of the individuals that we are serving. We're not a big nameless, faceless bureaucracy. And we have this continuum of housing that allows us to not be one of the systems in which people are constantly falling through the cracks. So
Before you go on,
Yes.
are you going to turn now to the project?
yes,
Okay, I'm going to stop it here because I really would love to let Susan Stetzer go off and have a martini. But I also don't want it to seem like, we're your PR team. Susan, can you talk a little bit about the Project Renewal projects that are in CB3 and the experience of working with Project Renewal in terms of, Yeah, you can unmute yourself. Oh, we still don't hear you. Oh, you muted yourself again. There you go.
Good.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to. So I've been district manager at CB3 for 20 years, and I've been working closely with Project Renewal for about that 20 years. This is our most impactful, the Project Renewal. We have about 15 shelters. And I'd say Project Renewal's shelters are the most impactful in our community. We have 3rd Street Men's Shelter on 3rd Street between 2nd and Bowery with over 200 men in 2 programs. And around the corner on the Bowery, we have Kenton Hall with about 70 men. This is 1 block from our office, so I keep a close eye on them, and I purposely walk by there all the time. I truly believe the difference of whether a shelter is successful and a good neighbor depends on the provider. The provider has to be experienced and professional and have staff dedicated to their mission. The area around these shelters is diverse. It's mostly Cooper Square Mutual housing, which is moderate income housing. There's a couple of 1-family homes, a few small businesses, and next to Kenton on the Bowery is a boutique hotel with outdoor dining. Over the last 20 years, Project Renewal has had some different programs, different populations, different problems have certainly popped up. Our relationship with the community board, I would say, has always been close and collaborative. When issues come up, we always communicate, and we have always come up with solutions. Recently, there haven't been many issues to even talk about, I'd say since pre-COVID. But I'll give you some examples of what has happened and how they've been resolved. Between 5 and 10 years ago, there was a shelter resident who was selling drugs, kind of a major drug dealer, and community on 3rd Street was involved. Project Renewal and the precinct arranged a closed meeting with the shelter, the precinct, Cooper Square Mutual Housing, their management representatives, and Community Board 3. We came up with, the police and Project Renewal came up with a plan that would document what was happening and allow the police to arrest. And there was a pretty quick arrest. And as an example of, I'd say, successfully working together.
With Susan, when there's a spillover effect, on the street or something like that, how does the community, what is their avenue for engaging with Project Renewal? Like, how does that work?
Okay, so just 2 weeks ago, we had a community advisory board meeting, and we were always make sure that particularly Cooper Square Mutual Housing Management, who does receive feedback from the residents, that they were there. And there were issues, this did come up, of people who live across the street from the shelter complaining about people on their stoop, smoking, that sort of thing. There was nothing illegal going on, but it wasn't what you know, what they were looking for in front of their homes. The program director, I'm gonna blank on his name, the program director gave us direct contact information to the manager of Project Renewal, and said they made an arrangement, anytime they would see something real time, they would call him. Also, they made plans for the manager to bring over some of the residents that live there to meet the staff so they could establish a relationship to deal with issues. And quite a few years ago, when this first came up, Project Renewal hired what they call community engagement specialists that kind of patrol the area around and will engage people, even though they're not doing anything criminal, but try and have them not just hanging around, try and redirect them.
Okay.
Did that answer your questions?
Yeah, I find that helpful, and we'll have a lot of other questions about Project Renewal's operations, but it's just helpful to be able to establish everything that Eric is describing, just the experience, the wealth of experience in managing a project like this in a community.
If I could just add to that.
Please, yeah.
The head of security of Project Renewal is Charlie Mulham. I guess he's not there tonight. He is very accessible and excellent. And he does go to like the precinct build-a-block meetings. He goes to the CAB meetings. I have his direct cell phone. Like there was one time we weren't happy with security, and Project Renewal and the board went to DHS. We got more money allocated, brought in a better security team. This is quite a few years ago. But I've always found that kind of solution-oriented working relationship.
Great. Is there anything else you want to add?
That's most of what I say. I do think most of the very immediate residents on the block have supported Project Renewal. There are issues that come up. They will complain if there's issues. But I think in general, they support them. They've supported raising, money that was allocated to improve their outdoor space. At the last CAB meeting, we actually talked about having some events where the residents, immediate residents and the shelter residents could attend events together. So it's not us and them, it's a community.
Great. Can I just ask DSS just to say one word about what a CAB is? If you can come just a little bit closer.
So I can stand up. So a community advisory board is 15 to 20 community members who advise on shelter performance, on community interactions, and we work together to improve any conditions, quality of life conditions that are in the community. It also includes elected officials and the community board.
And they're required, right?
They're required for shelters that are contractually required.
Okay, all right.
For certain shelters, not every shelter is required to have a CAB, but most are.
Okay, we have the only shelter that currently operates in CB2 is a Safe Haven on West 14th Street. We all know it very well. It's operated by CUCS and they have a CAB.
Yeah.
And they meet regularly, and I have to say they've been very responsive. Okay, sorry. Now, Susan, thank you so much.
Okay.
It's been great on TV. And thanks for joining us. So this is a good time to turn and talk about this project.
So I think what I want to do is hand it over to Sarah.
Sure.
She'll describe the population we'll be serving, how the shelter will be operated, what staffing we'll have, what the program will look like, what a 24-hour cycle is, what the staffing is overnight, how we'll engage with the community, and I'll just say that we'll have a front desk, staffed 24 hours a day. Anyone can come in real time and speak with who's ever at the front desk if there is an issue. We'll publish the phone number so you don't have to come in. And we do respond in real time.
Before we get to the program, though, there was a lawsuit against this project, and my understanding is it had to do with the building structure. I actually don't know the details of the lawsuit. Hey, Carter, can you share some light on it now that it's?
I actually don't know all of the details
Okay.
of it. What I think is, it is the main reason why it's been 4 years since we presented here till today, because we couldn't progress with registering the contract while the lawsuit was happening.
Yeah, I don't know the details, but I feel like it had to do with actual building structure, like fire.
It did. And my understanding is that it got completely resolved. And so the permits were approved, and the work is now happening.
Okay. All right.
Ask a question.
Yeah, sure, Jen.
Who placed the lawsuit? Who was it against? Was it against the landlord, against?
It was against the landlord.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Sarah, please introduce yourself and describe the program. Thank you so much for being here.
So can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So good evening, everybody. I apologize that I wasn't here in person tonight. So just a little bit of background of myself. Again, I'm Sarah Negron. I'm one of the vice president of programs here at Project Renewal. A large part of my role is overseeing a portfolio of shelters and supportive housing programs. And Kenton Hall and 3rd Street shelters are part of my portfolio as well that we were just talking about. I hold a master's degree in forensic psychology, along with 7 long years of experience in the social services field, 15 which have been in shelters, and the last 9 being at Project Renewal. I've worked my way up through many positions over 3 nonprofit organizations, which include case management, team leader, director of social services, program director, and senior director of programs. And with that being said, I'll get into the project that we're here to talk to you about tonight, which is 11th Street. So it will be a 90-bed single adult women's shelter for those that are eligible for employment. It will have a total of 33 full-time staff, not including contracted security, which would be 3 people per shift, 24/7, one of them of which is the supervisor. The facility will be equipped with security cameras throughout inside and outside, covering the perimeter of the facility, and will also provide 3 meals daily along with healthy snacks and offer an on-site laundry facility. 11th Street will have 24/7 operations staff and security coverage to ensure the safety and security of the facility for a minimum of 6 staff on site per shift. Our director of security that Susan mentioned before is Charles Mulham. He will visit the site on a weekly basis, in addition to diligently working to maintain relationships with our local precincts and NCOs. He hosts monthly security calls that bring the shelter administration and contracted security management together to discuss the concerns, solutions, and acknowledgements. In addition—
Sarah, 1 second. I'm going to just stop you for 1 second. I just want to tell everyone here, Sarah is handing out a lot of information.
Yeah.
And it's going by really quickly. You should all know that I get a transcript of this whole meeting, and we will be writing a report that has all of this. So if you don't catch it tonight, you will have it. Go on.
Okay, thank you. Also, if I know I speak really fast, so you can ask me to slow down at any point.
Oh, it's okay.
So Charlie also hosts monthly security calls, like I said, that bring the shelter administration and contracted security management together to discuss concerns, solutions, and acknowledgements. In addition to this, the account manager from the contracted security company will also visit the site weekly, in addition to a field supervisor that completes random pop-up visits throughout all shifts on a monthly basis. He also conducts access control training courses that are held twice annually, which familiarize all guards that work in the access area on how to use the security equipment. He provides de-escalation training, and all guards are certified in first aid and CPR. Security, along with shelter staff, conduct perimeter checks that cover the extent of the property to ensure that our clients are not loitering and are upholding our good neighbor policy. Like Eric mentioned before, we will form a community advisory board, and members from the community will be able to attend. They'll be encouraged to attend. The front desk staff is, again, staffed 24/7, which will allow our neighbors to either call or stop by with any grievances, and we will make our phone number available to everyone. There will also be a rotating on-call administrator schedule for emergencies outside of normal business hours. The operations team at the shelter assists with welcoming new clients, initial intakes, providing hygiene kits, and linen exchange, amongst other tasks. Each client entering 11th Street will be assigned to a case manager for the duration of their stay. They will work as a team with other players of the social services department to ensure that they have all necessary vital documents, medical evaluations, eligible benefits, and assessments needed to move forward in the housing process most suitable for each person. Clients are expected to meet with their case manager at a minimum of a bi-weekly basis to work towards goals set together on their independent living plans. Housing coordinators will work with clients to complete housing applications for employment-based subsidies and work to identify clients who may be suitable for supportive housing options. As Eric mentioned earlier, primary care and medical services will be offered out of our clinic that is located at our 8 East 3rd Street location. Clients will be referred to our employment specialist and job developer, which are overseen by Project Renewal's workforce development team. These roles will assist with resume building, interview skills, job placement, retention services, and more. They may also make referrals to our workforce development headquarters, which is a short 15-minute train ride away for related services and programming. We will also have a maintenance team on site that will be able to work and ensure the cleanliness of the inside and outside of the facility. 11th Street will also offer occupational therapy services. So the purpose of the OT is to help clients do what they need each day to maximize independence and quality of life. These services are critical to ensure clients successfully retain employment and housing. The OT, with the support from our peer specialists, will hold groups to facilitate skill building regarding emotional regulation, money management, activities of daily living skills, executive functioning, social skills, and more. These groups use fun and creative modalities to engage our clients. Most of these groups are held in common areas of the facility to encourage participation.
I'm going to stop you right there. You have a ton of information, but I think I'm getting lost in the sauce. Let me start with just a basic question. How does someone get placed in this shelter?
So there are assessment shelters, intake and assessment shelters that are run by either DHS or other contracted providers such as ourselves. They would have to go in there. So if, for example, I am a single adult and I am presenting as homeless, I would go to one of the assessment shelters that are for women, as that is how I identify. I would then have to go through an intake assessment process, which can take a couple of days, up to about 28 days in my experience I've seen, where I would meet with people in several different disciplines. So I would meet with someone that is in a mental health clinician, a substance use clinician. I would probably do like a domestic violence assessment. I would meet with an employment specialist. Towards the end of my time there, this team will get together and they'll decide, based on all of my assessments, what type of shelter is the most appropriate for me to go to, because each shelter is designed based on the type of population that they serve.
So for example, you mean like give me some examples of what those kinds of shelters might be and how this
Absolutely.
one, what's the definition of this one?
So this one would be considered employment shelter for those single adult women that are eligible for employment or are employment ready. And so we generally would not have those clients with mental health conditions, with substance use issues, anyone that is medically frail. We would really have people that are able to ambulate life on a daily basis, probably with very minimal barriers, so that way we can work with them, because the priority would be to get them employed and to get them housing based off of that. This is why this particular shelter will have workforce development staff working on site and also hand in hand in tandem with the actual headquarters that's at our headquarters on Barrack Street.
So, but it won't, for example, have on-site substance treatment, mental health treatment, like how does that work?
No. So generally sites that are mental health, I've run a mental health shelter within Project Renewal before. I've also worked at them in other organizations. When you're a mental health shelter, you generally have your staffing to include a psychiatrist, maybe some licensed social workers, things of that nature. So that way psychiatric evaluations can be done, ongoing therapy services can be had. Substance use services are generally available, because when you're dealing with mental health, sometimes, well, a lot of the times there's also co-occurring disorders of substance use as well. So for example, the other two shelters that I oversee, in the other district, which is 8 East 3rd Street and Kenton Hall. One is the substance use shelter and the other one is behavioral health, which is mental health. They have contracts for psychiatry. They have a lot of services on site. 3rd Street also has, an 820 program in there, which can do detox. It's also like a rehabilitation program. There's an outpatient substance use program there. There's a built-in clinic on site as well for medical services.
I guess the concern is this shelter that you're proposing on 11th Street, is it lacking in services? I mean, are these services that should be here and that aren't here for whatever economic or whatever reasons? Is there a reason why programmatically they shouldn't be here, or is it a function of other things?
It's programmatically, it being an employment shelter does not require it to have psychiatry. If for whatever reason, I do want to say, if for whatever reason someone is exhibiting symptoms of a mental illness, they would be able to be referred to Project Renewal's own primary care and mental health services and or substance use services. We do have those available and they would be available for referrals. If we also feel that someone is not suitable to be at an employment site because they have these other barriers that are coming in, and we won't have the supports on site at 11th Street, we can work with our partners at DHS to get them transferred to another shelter that would be able to meet their needs and have the contractual obligations that we're talking about here.
So if someone is placed in this shelter under the expectation or assumption that they are what you call eligible for employment, which I realize is really just defined by a process of elimination, and you find that actually they are there were issues that were not caught. They do have a substance issue or they do have mental health issues. You're saying that they could be transferred out.
Yes, they could be transferred to a shelter that is more suitable for their needs.
Okay. Elsa, can you tell me, so 90 women, single women, no children, no boyfriends, no children?
It's a single, if they have children, they are not with them in our shelter. So they come in and it's just them.
And is it congregate rooms? Like how many people to a room? Like what's that bedroom situation?
The sizes of the rooms vary. I'll talk to Eric about, well, I can move that over to Eric because I don't think that the rooms are cookie cutter, but I believe they are shared.
They are shared rooms, so they're all roommate situations. They're pretty small. So there are doubles, triples. I think the largest might be 6 in a room.
Just to get a sense, we don't have a lot. I don't have a lot, any familiarity with, I was gonna say a lot, pretty much any familiarity with shelters. We always hear a very scary scenario of these, large warehouse shelters where people don't want to go because they don't want to they don't want to be killed in the middle of the night. So not having that familiarity, it's helpful to know what kind of rooms these will be. So that's helpful. Okay, sorry. How long do we think it's going to take to develop the building?
The landlord is giving us spring of 2026 as his estimated readiness date.
Okay. I would be inclined to start with questions from the community, from the board committee at this point. Thank you. Just because I have a feeling that a lot more information will come out and we'll have other questions. So who on our committee would like to? Janet, go ahead.
Just curious, how long is a typical stay for the women that come in? And do you run any similar shelters?
So the average length of stay for a single adult in shelter is well over a year right now. Mostly because of the lack of availability of apartments. So the process in shelter is that you come in, you have an assessment, you have an independent living plan. Within the first 2 weeks, you're supposed to have that plan that is kind of your shared goals with us as to how you're going to exit so that everybody knows the goal is to leave and here's how we expect you to leave. Typically, that involves getting a housing voucher, rid of the city PEPS program. Those are the typical vouchers that I think are likely to be for many of the clients here. It takes maybe 3 months to get a voucher. Sarah, you need to tell me whether I'm saying the right things or not. But, and then the process of finding apartment begins. And so a lot of the extra time is waiting for vacancies, interviewing for vacancies, competing for apartments with other people in shelter. And then we move people out.
Can I just clarify? So the voucher, previously, the client had to wait a certain period of time before they were eligible to get the city voucher.
Are you people online able to see
Yeah.
well, just come a little bit closer. You can pull your chair in closer.
Previously, there was a waiting period before clients were eligible to receive the voucher, but they're eligible to receive the voucher as soon as they come into shelter. They get what's called a shopping letter, and a shopping letter allows them to basically shop for an apartment. Eric is right. The city is experiencing a housing crunch, 1.1% vacancy rate for housing in general, and 0.39% for affordable housing under $1,100. So many of these folks have a difficult time finding apartments, which is why they're in shelter for over a year.
So this type of shelter, the women may actually get a job and be working and very much part of society. They're just staying here because they can't find an apartment.
Yeah, I mean,
Affordable apartment.
we know this because of some of the people that we house in shelter. Some of the people who work for us, the gap between wages and rent is so great that there are people who are working a full-time job or even two and can't afford a rent.
And so my other questions, do you have any other workforce?
Have you run any shelters like this, of this program?
We do not have another specialized workforce development shelter. Probably the closest one is our shelter for LGBTQ young adults. Marcia's House, these are young people. They have very high rates of employment, and we work with them up there on employment.
Anyone else? Rachel?
I'm wondering, most people, even homeless people included, have some community of some sort. They know people. I would assume if they're women, some of them have children. They're not living with them, obviously, or if they were, they're on the street with them. Is there any structured way for them to see children or other family members in the context of the shelter?
Sarah?
So generally that we don't have children come on site to the shelters. Whenever I've, out of all my years experience, I believe 10 of them have been in women's shelters, particularly women's mental health and substance use shelters. I've had many clients that have children and had visitation, and visitation would generally be set up at another location because the foster care worker or the CPS worker from ECS would know that the person is living in shelter. They would not bring the child to the shelter.
Are these women able to have visitors at the shelter on 11th Street?
If they are service providers, absolutely. We have clients that are working with outside providers that we also work with as a team to, get that client to move along. They're able to have visitors, but as far as just like friends and family to come hang out and visit them, it's not something that's usually allowed. But I have had cases in the past where, let's say the goal was family reunification and the family wanted to come out to be part of a case conference. We would absolutely allow that because it was a very structured meeting. So that way we could all work as a team and figure out the best way forward.
But in other words, for those of us who are concerned about spillover effects, this is a neighborhood, lots of families, lots of children, lots of schools. Everyone is entitled to socialize, but I guess there is a question of would it be a place where a lot of people are socializing? And it sounds like it would be a place where the residents are socializing, but they're not going to be visitors coming to socialize. Okay. Ryder, you had a question?
Yeah. Maybe this is impossible to answer since the shelter's not open yet, but do you have a sense of the likely paths that the residents would have had into the shelter system? I think I imagine some people are imagining that the residents will be like formerly incarcerated or formerly street homeless or coming out of hospitalization. I imagine largely the population would be folks coming out of insecure housing situations, where they can't afford to stay or something like that. But that's conjecture. So I guess, do you have a sense of where these folks mostly would be coming from? Would they be coming from, housing insecurity where they've been renting an apartment or living with a roommate or maybe out of a domestic violence situation? What's the kind of modal profile of likely resident?
It's a great question. I wish I had a concrete answer for you, but the truth is there's no real way to tell because everyone is homeless for a different reason. There's so many different reasons and circumstances that lend itself to someone becoming homeless. It's a period in their life that they are unfortunately in, but we are here to be able to assist them. But all different reasons and combinations of reasons. We can't pinpoint one more than the other.
But I'll add, it's all of those reasons you articulated, and because this is a women's shelter, I would say that the domestic violence situation is a driver of homelessness, generally speaking, but especially for women.
Is that something that we as neighbors should be concerned about? Will there be boyfriends coming and threatening? I mean, they should be concerned about it, no question, but I mean also.
It's not a DV shelter, and there are DV shelters, so.
Domestic violence.
So women who are victims of domestic violence would not be assigned to this shelter if that was their explicit reason for being homeless.
I would like to say something also. I want everyone to keep in mind.
Wait, we need to see you. Can you just?
Okay.
I'm
sorry. I want to keep in mind, this is an employment shelter. And when the clients are going through assessment at our Franklin's Women's site, like she said, assessment can take up to 2 weeks or even a month. So while they're in assessment, DHS is assessing these clients. And what we're trying to do is not everyone that's homeless doesn't work. A lot of homeless people are employed. People are homeless because of the rents. A lot of people are homeless because of the rent. So we have to understand that just because you don't have a place to stay, don't mean you're a bad person. You have a lot of people who are coming through the shelter who are employed. So these employment sites work, these shelters work because usually more employed people are in the shelters together. They know I'm not going to stay out up to 1 o'clock because I got to go to work in the morning. And everyone knows when someone is employed, they are less likely to commit a crime. So like I said, when they come through our assessment sites, we're going to screen these clients and we're going to see a lot of times clients are coming and be like, I work. I need a shelter a working employment shelter. We don't have enough. So this is one of the reasons why this Project Renewal is open up one, because we have so many working homeless people and they want to be in shelters with people more like themselves.
Thank you so much.
So I want to clear that up.
Yeah, thank you. Also,
The employment shelters we have, they're doing very great. And like I said, when people get home from work, what they want to do, they want to come, get in their bed, get something to eat, and get back get up and get ready to work, do the same thing the next day. So these shelters do well, and this is one of the best providers. They're going to do well with this shelter, and I think this is going to be a great contribution to the area and, helping out homeless people and employed homeless.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had a question about curfew, something that got mentioned. What are the rules about leaving and driving and all that sort of thing?
Sarah?
So DHS dictates that our clients can leave as early as 6 a.m. every morning, and they can be back by 11 p.m. every night. They're expected to be inside the facility between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m.
There are some exceptions if the person is working during those hours, they're excused.
So if someone is working, for example, a 4 p.m. shift to a 12 a.m. shift, there are protocols that they have to go through with their case manager to provide a schedule. They have to provide proof of employment. We verify that, and then we're able to give them a pass in the system that would bypass their curfew, and it would extend it to the time that they would need to end their shift and give them enough travel time to get back to the facility without them losing their bed.
Thank you. Arturo?
Yeah, I have a question for Project Renewal. I'm a newer member on this board, so I'm kind of curious, like, why this location? Why this type of shelter? Like, how did this project envision kind of come to fruition?
So we did not choose the site. The city chose the site. They came to Project Renewal when they and the landlord got together, and they came to us as the provider. And so that's how we entered the picture.
I know it's very hard to, were you gonna ask?
Oh, just to answer that, it's an as of right. I think it was an SRO for women originally.
It was a hotel or an SRO. There's no ULURP involved.
Yeah, there's no ULURP, because the building
The
is as of
zoning
right
permits
this
it.
year.
But it was DHS that decided that the kind of shelter that was needed was an employment shelter for women, that's what was missing from the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
It's a assessment based on capacity, the number of people that are coming in. And then we decide based on capacity what's needed. So this employment shelter is needed for all the reasons that Tracy mentioned.
Yeah.
Great.
It's tricky, one of the reasons that we don't have shelters in this neighborhood is because it's very expensive to have a shelter here. It's really, so there was one proposed for Canal Street, there's one proposed for Grand Street. We have one on West 14th Street, but it's unusual. Zach, yeah.
Yeah, I have one question for our colleagues at DHS and a couple of small questions for Project Renewal. So do you have a sense of what the current shortfall is for women's shelter beds in the city?
Not offhand.
Okay. And then it would be great if we had those numbers just to contextualize.
How do you define shortfall?
I think that's a question.
Okay, all right.
The demand versus the supply,
Okay.
right? What's in between?
We are legally required to provide shelter for anyone who asks for it. So by definition, there is no shortfall.
Right, but we know there is.
So that's why I'm messing. We'll figure that out, how he defines it.
And then for Project Renewal, I think and Susanna was just asking this, but are there other rules to the shelter that, will be documented in terms
Smoking,
of,
for example?
yeah, like smoking, marijuana use, noise, alcohol consumption. I think there was some talk about visitors. So it would be great if you could walk us through like the basic run. And then my other question, which is much more specific, is what about pregnant women? Like because if the average time is 1 year of people staying in the shelter, what if a woman becomes pregnant?
I can answer that question.
Or is pregnant already?
If a woman becomes pregnant and decides they want to keep the baby, we will transfer them out before the baby is born to a family shelter, because this is designated for an adult shelter. You can't bring children into adult sheltering. So before the child is born, they will transfer her to because she's considered a one and oh, it's considered a family now. Right. We'll transfer her to one of our family shelters.
And if
Perfect sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
if they're pregnant to begin with, they're going to a family
Shelter, yeah.
Oh,
They're not gonna even come in.
Okay.
If you know that you're pregnant, you go straight to family shelter.
Got it.
Yeah, as soon as and I have experience with this, having operated a women's shelter before, the minute that we find out that someone's pregnant, we are calling our DHS administrators, we're sending proof of pregnancy, and we are sending them over to PATH, which is the intake for family shelters up in the Bronx.
And Sarah, can you speak a little bit to the other rules for
smoking,
what daily life is like in the shelter?
Marijuana.
Right. So, smoking cigarettes and smoking marijuana is legal in New York City. We will do our best to not have the clients loiter in front of our facility, let alone anyone else's homes. Like I mentioned before, security and our staff will partner up together to do perimeter checks. If they see anyone loitering, we will ask them to move around or, to stop what they're doing and come hang out inside of the facility instead.
There's no smoking of anything on the premises?
No, it's not allowed.
There's no
along with
smoking
alcohol
room or
use,
anything?
any illicit drug use. Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other rules? I know you mentioned that the 6 to 11, like, is there a lockout time during the day? Are there rules around their employment type? Like, and anything else I think that just would help us understand.
Generally, dorm sleeping areas, specifically, not the common areas, the sleeping areas are supposed to be closed between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. And this is to encourage clients to attend groups, go on job interviews, any other sort of appointments they have to keep, other programming. They are not kicked out of the shelter though during that time. They are allowed to remain inside of the shelter so that way they can keep their appointments with their case managers. Maybe they have a day off. Some clients will probably be sleeping. If they work overnight, we can give them a bed pass to get some rest during the day.
Okay, what about your security team? How many people will be there at any time? Like, how does that?
So security would be 3 per shift, one of them being a supervisor on every shift 24/7.
This shelter has 2 floors? How many floors does this shelter have?
I believe there's 5.
Oh, okay, shows you what I know.
4 or 5.
And talk about access control.
Yes, so access control, we have a magnetometer. They also get wanded by the guards, and there's also an x-ray machine. So every time a client comes into the building, those are the 3 parameters that they would need to go into. So they empty everything from their pockets, very similar to your experience at JFK when you're about to catch a flight.
Cool. Does the committee have any other questions? Otherwise, Ryder?
I'm trying about asking.
You can ask it later if you want.
I'll ask it now.
I would get it.
So I hate the fact that the delay of the shelter could potentially change the assessment of a need for this kind of shelter, because I want to editorialize.
Idea.
If DHS were starting from scratch in assessing what kind of shelters are most needed in the city right now, would a women's employment shelter still be at the top of the list? We were supposed to have a safe haven open in our district, but the plug was pulled at the last minute. And because we are seeing record amounts of street homelessness, I wonder if we were assessing from just, a fresh look, would we think that maybe this site would be better used as a safe haven, for example, without congregate rooms for chronically street homeless, but
And I should clarify something that I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for anyone who's listening, our understanding of the difference, there's something called a safe haven and there's something called a shelter. Tell me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
a shelter, anyone who wants shelter in the city is legally required to get it. If you want to enter the shelter system, you go to intake. You apply, you become part of the system, and then you get placed. There are people who refuse to do that, who choose not to do that. We call them the street homeless. There is a new model that aims to lure those people into shelter, and that's the safe haven model. So that if you go to intake, you're not going to end up in a safe haven. The safe haven beds are reserved for people who are deemed chronically homeless, and they get there through they get through their street outreach. So if I got that wrong, let me know, but it's helpful just to know what that is, because that's what Ryder's talking about.
Yeah.
If all things were starting afresh, would it seem just as important to have this kind of a shelter versus a safe haven?
And the mayor has spoke to this during his State of City address. He said that safe havens are among the most important resources to move street homeless individuals into permanent housing, from safe haven to permanent housing. And so perhaps there would have been a different consideration had this been a different time. But this shelter is super important for the women that it's going to serve. In the capacity, as I said earlier, we make a capacity assessment of what's needed, and this type of shelter is needed, as well as safe haven. So it is not either or, both.
Right. Yes, I don't want to operate in the scarcity mindset that we can only have one or the other, but it is encouraging to know that this wasn't just a need 6 years ago. It is a need still today. Thank you.
We have 2 members from the board who are not on our committee. Does Eddie or Carter want to ask the question before we open up to the public? No?
Thank you. Because I think most of this is the same as what we heard multiple years ago.
Yes.
The board already has a position on this. It doesn't require a new position.
Correct.
It is a standing position. And I think the concerns, I'm just reading the chat, are exactly the same.
I'm not.
The only
Chat.
difference is the passage of time here. And so I think we're, this is zoned for this use, which is actually why the owner sought out to lease it to the city and engage with this. It requires no changes. It's an SRO, which is increasingly unusual in our community to have buildings that still have that use. Many of them are put into high value uses for hostels and stuff like that. They're not actually used for this purpose. And so I think with all that said, I think the biggest difference is the passage of time, and there's some changes in our own neighborhood. And it seems that the concerns of the community are based around what's happening on our streets now, but this seems as part of the solution, right? And that's what I was just wondering if you guys might talk about that a little bit about, and you have already, but that's really, how is this a part of, and pipeline is jumping in my head, that's not quite the right word, but just of getting people on the right track.
But what I'd like to
And
do instead.
that's the part to getting work.
What
Right?
I'd like to do instead, we
So-
really haven't heard from the community yet in this meeting, so I think.
Well, it was my opportunity to ask questions, so that was my question.
Yes, no, I know.
So I just,
Yeah, no, so what I'd like to do is let's hear a little bit what the concerns are and let's address them that way. And then we can hear about how this might be a solution to those concerns.
Can I ask a question
Please.
procedurally? I know you have a lot of people that are going to want to ask questions.
Yeah.
You want to kind of capture them all?
Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to see how many people want it. Maybe not a lot of people have questions or comments. Maybe a lot of people do. But I guess a lot of people do. We are going to ask everybody, I said this at the top of the meeting, I'm going to say it again. If we, actually what we should do is let's go see how many people are attending.
I just summarized most of the questions, so I'm hoping I can hear an answer.
Carter, you'll hear it.
No, but you're directing them not to answer the question, so I'd just like to hear them speak to it.
Fine. Can you answer Carter's question?
I actually didn't quite understand the question. I think what you asked was, number one, is there any really difference between what we're talking about today and what we brought here 5 years ago? The answer is no. This is the same shelter that we brought to you then. And I think what's the second part of the question?
The part was the context of what's changed. So in the duration of the change from 2020 to now, we have a very different situation on the immediate streets. But the context and the concern of a lot of the questions is that this is somehow making that worse. But in fact, can you contextualize how this fits in when you're placed, right? You go in to seek services, and then there's a succession. People may not be placed here directly. Seems like a great opportunity, but how this actually moves through that. Because it's a great opportunity for people within the shelter system to be placed in the specific place. So people are afraid that this is the first place you're assigned to.
I can't speak to the rest of the context in the neighborhood, but I can say that probably one thing that has changed substantially since the 5 years ago that we first proposed this is that the gap between income and rent has gotten worse. So there are in fact more people who are in shelter and working, even working full time, and simply can't get it together financially to afford the rent and the security deposit and the other costs of moving into an apartment. And I'm confident and proud that we're what we have as an organization beyond just this shelter and the services that we're providing in this shelter will be appropriate and really excellent for the women who will be staying with us. Is that?
Yeah, I guess the concern is this isn't where you're first placed. You don't go to the main city intake and get assigned to this shelter. I mean, this is an important point because this is the concern.
I can jump in. If someone goes into intake and assessment and they're assessed and it's decided that their most suitable shelter is an employment shelter and 11th Street has a bed available at that time, they can be assigned to that shelter as their first official shelter.
Yeah.
And what is the criteria for that? I think that's the main concern that the community has.
Yeah, I think you guys have addressed that somewhat. It's essentially an elimination of other issues. They don't have mental health issues. They don't have barriers to employment. They don't have significant substance issues or mental health issues. Obviously, they don't have children. And that deem of, eligible for employment doesn't mean that they're, have a PhD or anything. It just means that they can live somewhere that has fewer behavioral services. Is that fair to say?
They could be employed. Let me say, so for example, let me answer the question. So if they go in the Franklin assessment site, right? Say they should tell them, I've been at the same job for 5 years. I'm employed, I've been at the same job for 5 years. They would be a great candidate for this type of shelter. So they wouldn't have to probably go to another shelter and go through a whole lot of assessment and you got a lot of city employees who work for the city and are in shelter. So there might come a city employee, this happens a lot. And they work for the city and they are homeless. So when they come to Franklin and they say, well, I would like to be in a shelter with, they might get shipped, that might be their first stop.
Great, thank you. I think that's very helpful. Let's get to the public. And again, Arturo's going to help by sharing. He's going to, Zach or Arturo going to help. There's a lot of people at this meeting. I see 89 participants. I don't know how many people are going to raise their hand when we invite you to. We're going to invite you to raise your hand. We will call on you in the order. We're going to go somewhat in the room and then to people online. I anticipate a lot of comments. I'm going to ask people to keep their comments or questions to 1 minute. I have an opportunity to then sometimes turn things into a question, ask a question of my own. And we want to be, this is in the interest of time. I don't think anyone wants to be here until 10 o'clock. And I think we'd love to hear from everybody if we could.
Just quickly. When people have their comment or question, was that going to be directly answered or do we keep going through all of the comments?
I think that we'll go through it and I'll stop.
Okay.
As I see fit, if you don't mind. Also, I want to say this, as I said, this meeting is being recorded. I am going to get a transcript of this meeting. If someone in front of you says exactly what you were going to say, you are not losing a chit by saying what he said times space. Times 10. I will see all of that. We will see anything anyone has written into the office. All of that will be reflected in our report. So let's go for it.
Can we just pause for a second? I think maybe first to see in the room, if you want to speak.
Yes, if you want to speak, can you raise your hand? Just raise it high so I can see 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. And then online, if you want to speak, can you raise your hand? I know Susanna announced before, but in case you want to add.
Using the raise hand function in Zoom, because we can't see you.
Oh, right. Good point. I figure everyone's experienced in this. And I will say that because there's only 4 voices in the room and they trekked out to come here, we're going to start with them and then we'll go online.
Yeah.
And we'll just do it from you.
Okay, great.
Let's see how we can get it so everybody can hear what you have to say.
I think that this mouse will.
You can do, you know what, I know
The thing is very good.
Okay, you're right. Good. So stand and we can hear you. What do you want to borrow?
Just open the timer.
Yeah.
Here, take the mouse.
They won't open.
Amazing. Thank you, Steph.
I'm so happy to give you the mouse.
No, there's a little.
There we go, I got you.
Oh, okay.
There's another.
And identify your name
that's
when you
yours.
start. But give me a second because we got to get.
Okay, there we go.
Speed. All right. Okay, go for it.
Sure. Well, good to be here. I've never really done anything like this before, so
Always
a
a
little bit
first.
nervous. I figured I'd write a few things out. Eric, we spoke 5 years ago. My name is Brad Finkelstein, and I appreciated your time. And I do want to say, number one, I am in favor of the shelter. I do think it's a false choice between sort of supporting the shelter and also having compassion. I think you can, be on both sides of the situation. I work closely with Stephen Banks, and I'm very familiar with a lot of the issues in the city. You understand that the details of the shelter are legal, determined, I guess, by this court case. All the court filings publicly available. I did look through the filings. It seems like it is legal under this grandfather concept. I understand that the fire department has either explicitly or implicitly blessed this thing. Although, to be fair, sort of under the parameters of what they were working with, the old code, it's not to say that they would bless this if this was a new building. And I guess in my mind, just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should do something. And my understanding of the details of the fire trap essence of this, and we could get into it, but essentially the people in the back of the building, they get out of their fire escape, they go down to the backyard. If the building is burning, they have to go down into the cellar. There's a new fireproof concrete tunnel. They'll be walking through the tunnel, and then they have to come out the other side in the front to safety. I mean, I understand it may be legal and it may have been blessed, but it does strike me as a common sense matter that it is a little bit crazy. And I think that when you combine the fire trap nature of it with the density, those are the two, it's the combination of those two things that I don't quite get. I understand that you can do it, but it just seems a little nuts to me to want to do it, knowing that everyone in this room obviously has compassion. People saw what happened in the Bronx with 100+ people die. We don't want some really bad
I'm
situation.
going to stop you.
Okay, that's all. I
Only
wanted to
because
say.
you've given you a lot of
Okay.
time, but you raised some important questions. The two ones I heard about are density. There's a lot of 90 people living in a building. I don't know how many people live there so far. And also, what's this question about the fire risk? So how do those approvals come about? Who determines that this is safe? This building is safe.
So
Thank you.
I'm not an architect or a general contractor, so I'm going to be careful on what I say. I know that there was a lot of review by the fire department. I was actually on site once when a DOB representative and the fire chief was on site, and they were discussing what would make sense. And I'm told that this particular form of having two means of egress is actually the norm for these kinds of buildings. There's not an exception that was created for this building, and that there are many buildings with exactly the same fire situation. One small detail is that if you go into the backyard, of course, you can't escape from the backyard. So you have to have a way to come back out to the front. There is a brand new fireproof corridor. It's on the side of the building. It's actually not, you're not going back under the cellar of the building. That's the one thing I would say that's different. And
what are the agencies that oversee, the legitimacy of an outfitting of a building? I mean, who's overseeing what you do?
It's DOB and the fire department, and they're independent.
There's also regulations inside, right?
Sorry?
There's also regulations inside, right? Like space between beds and how many beds and all that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of regulation. And the state has oversight over the entire shelter system through the Office of Temporary Disability Assistance, OTDA. And they have very explicit regulations about what they consider safe for shelter. And they will inspect, they approve the plans, but they also inspect the actual building and certify it before it can be open to clients.
The other question was about density. So I don't know how many people have been living there now, but it's not that many people. You're going to bring in 90 people. How does that compare to what the building's allowed to have, to what it's had historically? I mean, what do you know about that?
I don't know factually what the building had historically. I was told that when it was operating as a hotel, which I think was illegal, that it had more than 90 beds in the hotel at the time. I don't know how meaningful that is either, because it wasn't.
Right.
Untrue.
Okay. He's not professing to be a.
Yeah, I don't know the facts.
I just want to say I work in commercial real estate. Occupancy is always a big issue. People at restaurants, bars, clubs, two means of egress, and it's very, very typical. You put the doors 20 feet apart and people come out through a concrete I approve.
Okay, who next in the room? And we were intentionally lax on the time, but we're gonna try to tighten it up. Exactly. Can you set the timer
Yeah.
for a minute?
Yeah.
And give us your name.
My
please.
name is David Corletto. Eric, we've had the pleasure of talking, and I very much appreciate that. I guess I just have two things that I wanted to, bring up in this meeting, having never done one of these either.
Of course.
Community Advisory Board.
What was your name?
I'm sorry, David Corletto, Corletto.
Should we do 2 minutes for the people in the room?
Whatever, we're just gonna,
Okay,
I'm gonna be a manager. Go ahead.
Community Advisory Board, people in the neighborhood, of which I'm one, like to make sure that we're going to be working together and figure out the way to best do that. So all the interests of the community have been there also. I also am struck by this entire thing. And again, people have talked about the cost of living, the neighborhood, it's very expensive. The amount of rent that you guys are paying here. I've done some quick back of the envelope math. It's like $1,500 per month per person. And I just I can't kind of get my head around that. Like the money that is being spent here, wherever it's coming from, I think it's from the city and from the federal government. Could you be serving so many more people with these dollars somewhere else? Additionally, when you factor in the ladies that are going to be living here, it's very expensive in this neighborhood to get around. Like things you're going to do, where you're going to spend your money. It just feels like a very jammed in situation, and spending all this money, you could maybe serve a lot more people in a lot different way.
Thank you.
2 points.
I'm gonna guess that there are a lot cheaper places in the city to put shelters, and I think that one of the issues becomes, why are they always in one neighborhood? Why does one neighborhood bear such a burden? We have something called a fair share report evaluation, which is supposed to be done for any kind of facility of this sort, at least so we've been told. And I'm sure that the city would much rather not have to build a shelter in a place where the real estate is expensive.
but there's also access to jobs because we're central business district, West 4th Street Station, Union Street. There's a lot of transportation in the neighborhood.
Great, thank you for that. In the room.
It's important.
Who's next? I think it was you, yes? Do you mind coming up?
Sure.
Can we see you? Yeah, if you're loud enough and then
Like, you
tell
might
us
need
your
to
name
get a
and
little closer so the mic.
just a little bit closer so that this mic can pick you up.
Thank you very much. My name is Mark Husser. I'm a resident of 11th Street, and I just happen to be an architect as well.
Your last name is?
Husser, Husse.
Okay, thank you.
And so my questions are more, and also I just want to say that it's an incredible organization that you guys run, and thank you for doing it for all these years and being so effective at it. But I do believe that there are some factual things that'd be good to get, not necessarily tonight, but just to get on the record, information that might be provided in the future that I think would be helpful to everyone. One is specifically, we know that there's going to be 90 residents anticipated. How many rooms are actually in that hotel? I used to understand it's around 60, but that could be wrong. But that would be good to really understand, was there a large amount? There was a comment about the good neighbor policy. If details or at least access to that could be shared.
Yeah, good point.
Very helpful. What's the other one? Importantly, what are the provisions for food service on staff? There's currently no food service in the building. If there's no commissary or kitchen in the building, how do the residents eat service? And then that brings to a question about how's the building serviced, period, with all the goods and services and waste that go in and out of the building like that. It obviously has a very narrow 6-foot sidewalk in front of the building because of the situation with stairs in front. The other is there any community space within the building that would keep people from having to go outside to get any kind of gatherings? That would be useful, or within the back. I don't think there's a courtyard there, but again, I haven't seen the latest, I haven't seen the plans.
I think
Okay.
we're at time.
Yeah, we're at time. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
These are helpful notes. I think what we'll do is make sure that they're in the report. I'll ask you, we can follow up with this afterwards. Actually, no, let's ask, obviously, the number of rooms and the good neighbor policy would be good to get afterwards, but you could talk now about food.
So we have a warming kitchen. And there's also a cafeteria and there's program space. So there is space other than plenty of space, offices for the staff, offices where they can meet with clients, common areas, a laundry room. Food will be delivered once a day, and it's not a big truck. It's a little delivery van. And then we refrigerate it and warm it and serve it.
Is there a community space in the building?
There's the cafeteria itself is also a community room, and there's a patio in the rear.
And a patio,
Yeah. And that will have hours. That's not going to be open.
and that will have hours. I'm sorry, we're not gonna,
I live next door, so I just wanted to know.
yeah,
You can testify also.
yeah, they'll give you, yes, go ahead.
Okay,
Everything's on the schedule, if you're an architect.
I just wanted to know outdoors, I live exactly next door on
Right.
25. You know, windows, when it was the hotel, people were throwing out cigarettes, pizza, tampons, it was
Ew.
gross.
Ew.
You know, I'm a little bit concerned about those kinds of things going into my garden, the sound that might be heard from the backyard. Like every time I'm outside, I can hear people back there anyway. NYU makes a lot of noise because they've got the Italian Studies building. So I just want to know what I'm
Yeah.
in for.
Absolutely. So what do you know yet what the hours of the
Actually,
patio are gonna be?
You raised that, so the patio will have hours, and it won't be
And
late
it's
at
the
night.
back of the building where the fire is.
Yeah. Regarding windows, I'm going to confirm, but I'm pretty sure that either the windows will have that, very small stop, so they can't like be wide open, or they may not even be openable at all. I'll get the answer to
Because
that.
right now they open all the way.
That's
And I will say that the landlord has not been very
responsible
helpful or responsive to any of the building works that he's done, down to scaffolding and having things raining into my garden like concrete. So, I'm concerned about
the actual
he might be
development.
building.
Yeah, you're concerned about the actual process of
Yes.
development.
Yeah, exactly. And how safely he is.
It's important. There was someone else here, I think. Yes, go ahead.
Michael Foss, 4 doors down,
FOSS?
FOSS. I just want to make sure that we don't skip on anything, and this may have been in a page station past. Why 90? 90 is a lot. That makes, with staff, as you explained, more than 100. And you said, your words, up to 6 in a room. I've been in that hotel many times, long time ago. It's a lot. Just want to make sure that we touch upon that.
Okay.
Sure.
So there are regulations that
I
control.
understand that, but 90, this is what Brad says. Do we have to do it or should we do it? It's a choice.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean that. Well, I'm not being flip. I'm responsible for the health and safety of the people that are in that building. I'm not gonna do that if I don't think that we can meet the needs in a safe way. So I really am not just like.
Help us understand how we come up with a number, because obviously, if the city's gonna spend money on a building, they're gonna want to house as many people as they can in that building because they're spending a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
So how do you come up to the number 90? What are the things that go into determining that that space can house that number of people?
So what was the room count, just to be?
I don't know the room
We don't
count.
have it?
I'll get the answer.
No, not yet.
The explicit answer is that in a shelter, beds have to be a minimum of 3 feet apart. There has to be a locker for each individual of a certain dimension. The lockers have to be 3 feet apart. And that's what controls what the density is the 3 feet rule. So the number 90 is arrived at by looking at the square footage of each of the room spaces and what's the configuration that allows the regulation of 3 feet apart.
Okay, thank you.
Right in the last resolution is the Callahan rules.
I did.
Cited court case.
Yes, I did. But a lot of this is new to people.
And that is standard across the entire shelter system. That's not different here.
Can I ask just one question?
Yes.
Is there any plan for use on the roof of that building?
I'm sorry, can you?
Larry Gordon, Gordon. Is there any plan for the roof
Where
of
are
the
you?
building?
You're down there.
I'm pretty sure.
Common space.
I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
Okay.
I'll confirm that.
Please confirm that.
Okay, let's go online, yeah?
Okay,
All right.
so I'm gonna.
Okay.
You have one more back here. Susan.
The gentleman already-
One that I missed that I think is quite important.
Sorry, I just a point of order that you already provided your public testimony, so.
It wasn't answered.
No, I don't expect an answer. It was
I'll make an exception, but just,
Accessibility was the question. If
you mean for disabled?
Yes, because it
ADA.
doesn't meet ADA requirements.
Okay.
Code,
All right.
But how would you deal with people with reduced mobility?
They wouldn't be assigned to the shelter if they're not appropriate for the physical structure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Oh God, I'm already stressed.
So I'm going to elevate. I think there are
How many
12.
people do we have so
13.
far who want to speak?
13.
13? All right, let's put it to a minute 30.
Okay.
I think we can afford that.
All right. And
Thank you everyone for bearing with us. And I'm sorry, I know it seems so rude to cut you off. I just, if we end up having more time, we'll revisit all of this, but we
And
just
you
want
can
to.
also obviously send in
Oh, yes.
questions to the community board.
I should announce that. Anyone who has questions who haven't been answered or has comments that don't get an airing tonight, please feel free to email the community board. I will read every single thing that is sent to the community board. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to be promoting you and panelists in blocks, but please only speak when you are called on. So up first we have Paul, and then Jennifer M. and Daniel. And again, to begin your testimony, please share your name, and much appreciated if you can have your camera on. All right, so over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul Parisser. I'm going to try to go very quickly. I want to ask that the subcommittee consider a resolution and that it reflects what seems to be widespread concern for a variety of issues surrounding this. And I would also hope that it would reflect that there would be an agreement of protocols between the Community Advisory Board and Project Renewal and the owner. And I would ask that immediate neighbors be invited to join that. Next, I note that PR is not on trial here. They're an excellent provider of services. And I don't think anyone has a question of, are they an excellent candidate to operate in the system? The issue is the building itself. I am in the real estate business, and I can assure you that there were many shortcuts that were taken to come up with a plan to make this building work. The 2 fire escapes, for example, that was meant to go to the street 20 feet apart, they meet inside the building, illegal. They come up through one means of egress, up set of stairs, out a set of stairs to get to the street. It was all done because it was politically expedient, and it was a grandfather that allowed all this to happen. And I get to the fact that it could work, but boy, you're shoving, as I see it, there's 150 feet per person coming into this building, and it is just horrible. Next, I would also note that Paul's place is within a few blocks of this.
Paul, I'm sorry, that's it for your time.
Hold on to your thoughts. If we're able to do a second round, we'll do a second round. We're going to go on to the next person. Thank you, Paul.
The next person is Jennifer M.
Hi, good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I thank you for having me on. Look, I'm an educator. I'm a resident. I live in the neighborhood, and I think it is important to have shelters and house individuals that are in a temporary state of disarray and trying to get back on their feet. And I support that beyond anything that I could express tonight. I'm asking all of you if you're aware of the state of affairs and the humanitarian crisis that we're dealing with in this neighborhood right now, in terms of our safety, the drugs, the violence, the crime. There have been incidents and episodes, not once a week, the multiple times throughout a day, throughout the evening. We can't walk our dogs. Our local stores are closing. Our businesses, our stores are being robbed on such a regular basis. How do you plan to keep these women safe? How do you plan to keep your workers safe? Do you understand the state of affairs that right now is going on in our neighborhood, where you're about to bring people that are already vulnerable and not at their best?
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being so fast with your time. I think we'll just keep going on. But thank you for your question.
Next, sorry, I'm trying to look this timer. Next up, Daniel.
Thank you. I'm Daniel. I live on West 12th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues, and this shelter is necessary. We need it in our neighborhood. Paul's Place is the only other place that offers services to people who need it, and providing more services to people would make everybody safer. So there is a drug problem. I've noticed it too. But the solution is to bring more services to the area where people need it. And that would help to resolve some of those issues. So I support this shelter very strongly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that in 30 seconds.
You were faster than other people could join as panelists. But next up is Mariah, if you're with us. Sorry, I'll add some more time.
I would just like to give a shout out to Zach and to the entire team for helping with the logistics of this.
Mariah, if you can sorry, I might be saying your name wrong, but if you could turn on your video and unmute, you're welcome to provide testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can't see you.
Okay, for some reason I'm not able to turn on my video, but I'm
All right, whatever.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm Lisa Ehrlich Rapkin. I live at 15 West 11th Street. And, you know, I just want to sort of get a sense of whether this is where we are in sort of in the process. Is this a fait accompli? Is this a sort of a, you know, a gratuitous meeting for the neighborhood? I do think, you know, and I know that Paul Paris, I sort of cede some of my time to him. I think that I would hope that there's more due diligence. I just feel a little nervous about the situation that these women are walking into. I think that I know that there's been some, you know, reluctance, but I think that it seems like it's been sped through the whole process, and there are some issues. There's fire issues and health and safety issues and health code issues. And, you know, we're concerned. I think it's a wonderful organization. I think it's an incredible mission and cause, but I just don't want to rush through. So I would love to know where we are in the process. Is this something like, okay, let's just have the neighborhood weigh in and this has already been decided? Or is there really room for our opinions and our discourse?
Thank you. There's some of this I can address. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, the city does not require us to weigh in. The city is required to notify community that shelter will be placed there, but unlike other things where the community board accepts an application, is assigned an application by the city, that's not the case here. My understanding is that there is a contract with the city so that this is in the works. Having said that, the reason for these meetings is that it's going to be an iterative process in the sense that we want to hear from the community about what your concerns are, about the development, about the operation. We want the provider to be responsive to the community. And this will not be the first and last meeting that we have about this. I mean, we have gone for 5 years without a meeting because there was a lawsuit which prevented everyone from speaking about it. But had there not been, Project Renewal would have been coming in every 6 months or something to apprise us of what's going on and to hear from the community, even before it's up in operation and it has a community advisory board. Let's go to the next person.
The next one is Mahira. Sorry, I think we skipped you, but please come join us.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you holding this meeting. I really appreciate everyone who came out. I understand there are some concerns, but I really implore you all to, you know, think of your neighbors with compassion. I understand there may be concerns of who this might bring into the neighborhood, but I want you all to really understand that times are tough right now, and people in shelters, especially women in shelters, if you spend some time in local shelters, you'll see that there are people just like you and me, you know. It's not this thing that we might think of it. It might be a little scary to think of welcoming new people to the neighborhood, but every year the West Village welcomes thousands of students to the neighborhood. And these students are 18, 19-year-olds that might be a little even more dangerous than the women that are coming into the shelters. They are women that are employed. So I do want you guys to just keep an open mind. Obviously, your concerns are valid, but I would like to, I support this shelter and I would like to see more initiatives in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mahira. Can you tell us where you live? Sorry.
I live in Queens, but I work at Battery Park City.
Okay, and you work at Battery Park City?
Yes.
So Battery Park City is not our neighborhood either.
No back and forth, please.
Battery Park City is not in CB2. We will ask people to prioritize people who live or work in CB2 because this is a community board meeting. But thank you for your input all the same. Let's go to the next person.
Yeah, Tom, over to you.
So when you identify yourself, if you don't mind, just give us your name and whether you have a local affiliation or where you live or something like that so that we know where you're from. Thanks. Tom?
Yes, Tom Brown. I live on 11th Street. I'm 100 yards away from the building. Many of my concerns have already been voiced, but I'd like to reemphasize the building is not up to a code that would be acceptable today. That troubles me. And the fire escape really troubles me because the last thing we want is a disaster for these women. At the same time, we're talking about putting 90 or 100 women or how many into this building. And when I hear 3 feet apart, I understand the rule and why it's there, but it just seems to me that this is an overcrowded situation with 90 or 100 people in one building. And where are they going to go? Now, I heard common area and the cafeteria, but no one wants to have 11th Street looking like it's outside the Roosevelt Hotel. And the other thing I heard too was I heard the fact that there were going to be something like 100 staff, and then I heard 3 staff. And I know that depends on the shift and what the jobs are and so on, but I think a little clarification there. Is there an elevator in the building? I did not hear that. And that would be of concern too, because it's 5 flights and so on. So again, my concerns have been voiced many times, but I want to emphasize them.
Thank you, Tom. So as I reflect your concerns, they're primarily about the fire egress and density. You're concerned also about gathering on the street. And the answer is there is an elevator in the building. Thank you very much.
Brand new.
A brand new elevator in the building. Did you want something to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I don't know if it's the best comparison to compare it to the Roosevelt Hotel. Many of the folks, all of the folks in the Roosevelt Hotel are migrants. They've come here seeking jobs and employment. They're unable to work. And so many of times they're congregating in front of the facility because they're not working.
Because they're not working. Thank you very much.
These individuals who are going to be in this shelter are employable or they'll be employed. So they'll be going to work, coming home, going to sleep, doing the same thing the next day.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Let's go on to the next person.
Okay, thank you. The next person is Robert Manst.
I don't see. There you
Hello.
go.
Yes,
Hi
thank you
there.
for the, hello. I have an apartment next door in the building next door. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I have a few specific questions. One is, can the use of the site be changed and how? If it was decided to not do this type of employment shelter you're talking about, but a safe haven, for example, how would that come about? That's number one. Number two, where is the division in responsibility between DHS and Project Renewal in terms of intake and care of the women who will be in this shelter? Like, where does one responsibility end and the other begin? The other question is about the common areas. It's been aired already, but I have seen the building plan, the architectural plans, because they're available on DOB website. It does not look like there's a lot of common area at all. You mentioned that there's going to be a lockout from the rooms between 8, I think you said 8 and 4 p.m. Is that on weekends as well, when people might not be working? And where will the people congregate in the meantime? And the last question I have is, if the neighborhood would like to embrace this project, what can be done to better integrate the residents who live there and the people who will become the clients of this shelter? Thank you.
Thank you. So a couple of questions here. The DHS, and just talk about the relationship between DHS and Project Renewal on this. My understanding is that DHS contracts you and then DHS just has an oversight role, but.
Well, on a day-to-day basis, DHS is responsible for intake or for selecting who comes to us. We don't control that. And DHS regulates what we do. They're on site quite often. And then we're responsible as a provider for delivering the services. You want to say
Great.
more about that?
And then in terms of areas, so you had said, Sarah, that between 8 and 4 or something, residents are kept out of the bedrooms, the dorms. What about on weekends? Where else do they have to go in the building?
Weekends and holidays, that is lifted. And that's pretty much in any shelter I've ever worked at. It's lifted on weekends and holidays.
And presumably if someone is working on the weekend and has Monday and Tuesday off, they get a pass to be able to hang out in their room.
Yes, absolutely. That will be worked out with their social services team.
And areas of congregation in the building, I don't know what the size of the cafeteria is like, but is there any other place to congregate?
The cafeteria, the patio area. There should be some other programming space, especially because we have occupational therapy and a peer specialist on site. So there's generally space that's built out for that.
Great, thank you. Let's go on to the next person.
Okay, it looks like Jen had requested to speak, but here, she is as a panelist. Jen, are you on with us? We cannot see you. Okay, maybe let's go to Vivek in the interest of time.
Great, thank you. I'm Viv Mawani. I actually do live on West 11th across the street. Appreciate the time. I had the benefit of speaking to Eric too, and I appreciated the time with Eric. I saw the contracts. I think there were two things I wanted to just raise that struck me from the contract with the city. One was that there is no limitation as to what, there's no limitation in the contract that it has to be a women's shelter or that they have to be ready for employment. So I'd love to just understand at some point how the community board and the community gets comfortable that that doesn't change. The other thing that struck me, which I know others have mentioned, was the rent. It's $1.7 million, which translates, as I think David mentioned, to $1,500 per person per month, which is exceptional for like a few hundred square feet, even by New York City standards. And I think while the landlord may have found a way not to take it to code, shouldn't it be incumbent on, or I'd ask people, shouldn't it be incumbent on the city and the community board to insist that he does take it to code? Make it ADA compliant. He's getting a windfall on this shelter on the back of the city, and women who have no choice, literally. He could never take it to market or rent it to any of us in this room without taking it to code. So I think those are the two things that really struck me about the contract. And I'm not sure if we've all focused on, I think Project Renewal is a great organization, but this is causing a windfall for someone who we could push back on to get him to take it to full safety and code.
Thank you very much. I have a question that comes out of this is, if the contract doesn't specify the program, what guarantees that this is the program?
So the contract, it's a standard human services standard contract. So there's no difference between the language here and any other contract that we or other providers have.
So if tomorrow, is there a scenario in which tomorrow becomes a room for 90 people with substance issues?
So the city probably has to answer that. The one thing I will say is that you couldn't easily convert this into something that wasn't a shelter. Like a safe haven is a very different configuration than a shelter. So I can't imagine that the city would make the decision to change the use from shelter. Regarding the population, in my own experience, I have not seen the city change a use, but that doesn't mean the contract doesn't prohibit it.
Got it.
And Project Renewal probably would have a voice in that, not control, but a voice. And
thank you.
That's right.
Okay.
It could change,
but the provider would have a voice in that, obviously. Correct. All right, let's go to the next person. Thank you for your questions.
Okay, the next person up is Tracy C. I see you're on video. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tracy. I live on Washington Place and 6th Avenue. And I think I speak for a lot of the neighbors on here when I say this sounds, like a wonderful project. I think that this project seems like it was approved 6 years ago. And I feel like a lot of us who are very involved with the community, who have kids in the community, have been dealing with issues that are more recent. And I think in light of that, have concerns about any large scale development happening in the community. So this is not a reflection on the possible demographic, but really just the fact that we hear again and again from our reps that we're understaffed for resources in this community, for safety, for law enforcement. And so I guess I would ask in this time, is there anyone, I understand that CB2, you don't technically vote on this, this is just for the community, but is there anyone in the city that votes on this, or is there a way for community members to talk to the people who are ultimately making this decision about our concerns and how to address them properly?
Thank you. Well, first of all, your concerns will be reflected in a CB2 report. I can guarantee you that. If it was something that you wanted to take up with an elected official, that is obviously your prerogative to do.
But is there a specific office that votes on this or is in charge of this, or this is just a deal?
Let's hear from DSS.
No, it's not required. Europe is not required. The city could stand up shelter based on the capacity needs in any community where there's a vacant space for shelter.
It's an agency decision. Thank you. Yes, Eric.
I'll take a small risk here and
Yeah.
give a piece of advice
Yeah.
to the community, which is if there are specific things that would make the neighborhood better, ask for them. Focusing not so much on the shelter itself, but this is a good opportunity to ask for other resources in the community.
Yeah, I mean, we have as loud as we possibly could. So if you have advice on who to ask besides everyone that's ever been elected in New York, that would be fantastic.
Well, obviously, it's a lot of those recent issues that I think you're referring to have been issues, I mean, that our community board has taken up. Yeah, a lot. It's a difficult situation. Okay, let's move on, shall we?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
Tracy, over to you, Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Gottlieb. I've lived in the village, in this neighborhood, 40 years. I just want to amplify something that Tracy and Jennifer Mazzata alluded to or spoke of, although I can't understand why Jennifer's questions weren't answered. I'm a little confused about that. We have an enormous hard drug problem in this neighborhood, both in terms of using, dealing, and buying. Someone on the panel mentioned that the drug abuse issue amongst the potential residents is, moderate, not major. What exactly does that mean? Because it is very easy to access fentanyl and heroin on the streets adjacent to this proposed shelter.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. You may know that we have had a lot of issues with substance and that intersection between homelessness, substance abuse, and serious mental illness. So what about drugs and the women who will be living in your shelter?
Sarah, I think I'll ask you to speak to that.
Sure. So I would think that at the DHS intake site, if they even have moderate, they would not be assigned to an employment shelter. They would probably go into a mental health and or substance use shelter, so that way they can get the services that they need based on the assessments and the way that they presented while they were there. Again, we do not anticipate to have people with major barriers at 11th Street that have mental health, substance use, severe medical issues, because we're not going to be equipped to be able to deal with that at our site.
So I'm going to guess that at intake, there are a lot of things that intake doesn't get to see, right? Someone who's using drugs, who has not decided that they want to stop using drugs, will be able to hide that to some extent, right? So what happens if a resident turns out to be going to Washington Square Park and buying fentanyl and using it, and you discover that?
Right. So as explained before, we would work with our partners at DHS to get them transferred to a facility that would be more suitable for their needs.
And that happens.
DHS is not.
That happens fast.
That happens fast. Jane, you're shaking your head. I'll give you a second to ask you're muted. You're muted. Can you unmute yourself? Because we can't hear you. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Muting me. DHS, because of our laws, I don't want to go into this too deeply, has been ineffective in helping us with this problem. And by the way, when the park closes at midnight, the dealers and users come onto our streets, and that's where they stay and sleep. And that includes 10th and 11th Street, 9th, 10th, and 11th. So I just want to tell you what you are facing in this neighborhood. This neighborhood is in crisis. I'm not
Yes.
exaggerating.
No, we're all well aware of it. Thank you very much for your input. Yes, this is a subject that we've been talking about for a long time. Shall we go on to the next person?
We do not have any more people
Really?
online. I tried elevating the last two, Jen Hopi and 12th Street, but
Okay.
they did not accept this.
So some of you who were frustrated, if you'd like to raise your hand again, and we'll come back to you. We have a little bit of time to do that. It's 8:30. We're going to get out of here by 9, before 9. Was there anyone in the room that wanted to?
I would just like to.
Or anyone, I'm sorry, before you see, anyone online, you may also raise your hand. Go ahead. Can you identify yourself? Too?
Yes, Daniela.
Wait.
I'm the neighbor.
Daniela, what's your last name?
Epstein.
Epstein.
Yeah. I just want to point out that in terms of congregation, the patio in the back is maybe 12 feet wide. There is no room for more than 5 or 6 people out there at any time. So I really don't know where they would go.
Okay.
So, it's claustrophobic.
Yeah, that's helpful to know. Anyone else in the room? Go ahead. We have to cut you off. So.
No, I just think hearing the dialogue, it would be very useful. Now, from what I understand, your organization hasn't operated a employment-ready facility, or this is the only one that you are beginning to operate, right?
As a designated employment shelter, yes,
Okay.
That's correct.
So it may be difficult for you guys to understand the exact demographic of the people that you're going to be receiving by the evaluation of the city. If the city has any kind of statistical data on the demographics of the people that you place into the employment-ready shelters, that would be really valuable to know.
What type of demographic?
Yeah, for instance, if you keep records on, how many have criminal records or drug abuse problems, substance abuse problems, or those type, or psychiatric problems. If you keep those kinds of statistics.
I mean, perhaps criminal records, but psychiatric problems.
Drug, substance use.
Substance use.
We wouldn't share that information.
But, whatever you do, can and legally, track.
Oh my God. Yes, you may. Hold on one second. I have to plug in somewhere because I'm about to die. Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess just hearing everyone's comments and seeing a bunch of the chats that were showing up on the screen, it does seem to me that there's a little bit of a different sense of the room now versus 5 years ago. And I do think that this board should pass a resolution acknowledging that their sense of the community is supportive of the shelter, but there are concerns around neighborhood issues and building issues that I think the community board should commit to working closely with Project Renewal, which everyone acknowledges is best in class, to try to address. That would be my suggestion for what this board could do tonight.
Thank you.
Susanna, we have 8 new hands online.
Okay, let's go to those. Let's go to those, and then what we'll do is we'll pretty much wrap it. Is there anyone else in the room that wanted to? Elizabeth, we'll have Elizabeth Gilmore, come on, one of our own. We can't see you and you're all the way in the back. So maybe we could do this.
You can see her now.
We can see you, and if you're well, you can speak. So introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Gilmore. I live on the block.
You're also a public member of.
A former member of the board and a public member of Parks and Waterfront Committee. I've lived on the block since 1975. As I think most of you know, we're a very privileged block. And I really appreciate listening to the concerns tonight, and I understand some of them are very valid, but I, for one, support this shelter. I have great confidence in Project Renewal, and I myself look forward to working with them to make this the best possible experience for these women in need of help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to the people in the room and then we will go into,
Online.
yeah, right, that's what I meant, of course.
I'm
Jesus.
elevating Ally, Paul, and whoever is as 12th Street. So Ally, you are up first.
Thank you. I haven't heard anything mentioned about e-bikes, and I was wondering if someone could share if there's going to be an e-bike policy. And also if there's going to be a special policy towards e-bike batteries.
See, so, yeah, you're referring to what we've heard at many of the migrant shelters where they've been storing e-bikes that have been used for employment. Can you talk about that at all? You're planning an e-bike charger?
That's the first I'm hearing of this, so we'll go back.
Okay, I'm going to guess that your concern is that there not be an opportunity for fires, for batteries to implode. Thank you for that. That's very helpful.
All right, over to you, Paul.
Yeah, just can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to finish a few comments. One,
yes.
I know there's a new elevator going in, but I want everyone to understand that under current code, an elevator should carry a gurney. A gurney is a big thing if someone gets in trouble upstairs. This elevator is going to be tiny. Next, a comment was made by Eric that it's not easy. It can't be converted, this building, to, and I'm going to disagree with that. It's all about money and space. If you allocate all the space to residents, then you leave less space for essential services. If you made wider stairwells and all the other stuff, maybe you'd fit fewer people in it, and it would cost an awful lot more money. This building could be made to be ready-made as a perfect shelter, a very safe place, if more money was being spent on it. And that really is the point. Yes, you can do it. It's about money, and it's about giving away some revenue in terms of space. And I'm going to finish by saying as follows. I'm surprised, and I would hope that this committee would raise questions why they're comfortable with the fact that 90 women would be living in a building with a lower standard of safety than any of the neighborhood residents that you would get to live in any building that you would live in. It's unacceptable to me. It's not fair to the women. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Should we go on?
All right, yeah, next up is 12th Street, and can you please let us know who you are before you start your testimony?
Yes, my name is Susan Brown. I live on 12th Street, as you said. I'm also in the real estate business, and I'm concerned about codes and safety of the women, which everybody keeps talking about. I believe you keep emphasizing what a safe space this is for the women, that it's all women, there's no kids, there's no visitors, there's no men. Can you address the issue? First of all, can you answer, are there still 5 rent-controlled men living there? And if so, what are the plans about that? Are they being segregated in a different spot, or it no longer is just a female-occupied building at that point?
Thank you. That's helpful because that was a question 5 years ago.
I know that there are fewer tenants in the building. I think there are 3. Yeah, I think there are 3. And there are special protections in place for them. If and when they leave, I believe there is an agreement that those rooms will be
turned over to you.
Yeah.
But who controls that relationship? Is that between the property owner and the city?
That's actually, that relationship is, I think that relationship is and remains with the landlord, but I actually need to confirm that.
That would be helpful to know.
Yep.
Thank you, Toast.
I would like to add something.
Yes, can you
It's
tell us
Richard
the name?
Geist, Richard Geist on 12th Street. And there's a few concerns. Being on the Village Alliance board for 14 years and having a retail space on 8th Street for 20 years, it's about, we always try to compromise, a win-win for all. And when I saw this proposal, 90 women plus staff, service, security, it seemed like the proposal, there's no compromise. It seems like there's not, let's go to like 68 women. My friend Willard owns the building and there was far less room. I think they called that the 56 key hotel. But to put 6 women in a room, again, I want these women to be safe. I have programs in Toronto. These programs can be very successful, but you need to listen to the neighbors who've been here for many, many years. The synagogue down the street, the church down the street, the other church down the street that has soup kitchens already, that has people lined up. We have capacity. Things have been studied for the community already, and it seems like no one's talking. And the backyard, when we have an argument, like when there's people, if there's working people there, we lean out the window and we talk. How are we going to do that with these women? I just see that there's going to be calling the six precinct. There'll be people throwing things out the window. I've seen it before, and we have to make it a win-win, so this can be a winning program for the whole community. And this, because the backyard seems like a disaster. The open window seems like a disaster.
Okay, all right, thank you, sorry.
Thank you very much. Actually, one thing that we commented on 5 years ago when this came up was there was a lot of interest expressed in trying to find bridges into this community. It's one thing to put a building with residents in it. It's another thing to build bridges into the community. I'm going to guess that there are going to be a great difference of life experiences. And so I hope that at least through the Community Advisory Board, if not through some other body, we'll be able to find ways to find exchanges. Also, I presume that you're doing community outreach beyond just the community board, but I think that that would be a very good suggestion. And if you want, we can talk about that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, everyone. And good
Thank you
luck.
very much.
Thank you.
Let's go to the next.
Okay, I elevated Jen Hope. It seemed like she had a technical issue earlier. Jen, are you with us?
Hi, Jen.
I'm so sorry. I think I missed the prompt because I am balancing with making dinner. I'm Jen
No
Hoppe.
problem.
Thank you. Sorry. I'm Jen Hoppe. I'm one of the Democratic district leaders for 66A. I know this community incredibly well. I also work basically across the street. And I just wanted to say that my husband's family were either on the board or volunteers or both for Project Renewal for many, many, many years. Cameron Kraus. I have every confidence that Project Renewal can make this shelter work and is committed to working with the community, and that it will be a win-win situation. And I truly believe that we, as a community, need to embrace people who need a leg up, and especially women, at the thought of people working a job and still not being able to afford a roof over their head really breaks my heart. And I would encourage everyone to try to think of it from that perspective as we look around New York at our neighbors. I think it's on all of us to solve the homeless crisis that we all clearly recognize. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Right, and thank you, Jen. Jen's wonderful. I know her well.
Thank you, Keen. I know her well too.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like Enid has dropped, so we're gonna move over to Maria.
How many more speakers are there?
3, I think.
Okay.
No, maybe 4.
And we'll cap it at 4. So please don't raise your hand anymore. We're going to cap it at
Maria, are you with us? If not, we will go down to Lori.
Okay, I'm here.
Oh,
sorry. I'm
no
trying
problem. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Maria Cristina Paravicini. I live 2 doors down, and I've been living here for over 30 years. And I have to say that I strongly agree with several people that just spoke, especially with Paul Pariser. I do believe that the building is very small to accommodate 90 people. And I'm very concerned that, especially during the warmer months, where all the residents are going to be spending more time outside because of also the limited space indoor. I'm not sure if they have central air, how they're going to do it, but they have a very small outdoor space. Therefore, they're probably going to congregate outside the building with their friends. And therefore, I think that there would be a strong, like an increased foot traffic and a lot of noise, and this is going to disrupt the daily life of all the residents on the block. And also, I'm very concerned for the women themselves, that they live in an overcrowded building with all the problems related to that. And I just want you to keep this in mind. that it's a serious issue.
Thank you very much. I think that one of those questions, for example, concern about congregating, what the residents will be doing once they're living there, I think is going to be a subject for ongoing conversations, especially once you're in operation and there is a community advisory board, which I recommend you all try to participate in. Those will be the kinds of things that we will hope is part of the good neighbor policy.
And if I can add, security doesn't just stop at the door. Most providers conduct perimeter patrols, and so they're constant surveillance of the surrounding area and making sure that the residents are coming in so they're not a nuisance to the community. So I'm not sure if Project Renewal is planning to do perimeter checks, but most of our providers do.
I think Sarah did mention perimeter checks. Shall we go on?
Yeah, next up is Donald.
Hi there, I live directly next door. So I have a question about commercial traffic. We already have on our block a soup kitchen and a college. And when commercial vehicles stop, such as trucks, other cars can't get by. So people ride their horns. So frequently we just hear people honking and honking and honking, and it can go on for several minutes. Now we're adding yet another sort of commercial operation onto the block. And so which will presumably bring in more trucks, food delivery, other services. What is your expectation for commercial traffic so we can know sort of what this is going to look like?
Very good question.
Food will be delivered once a day, and it'll be in a
van?
A small van. It's a van. It's not a truck. I actually don't have the answer to like how many other deliveries there are during the course of a week, but I'll get that.
Okay.
For a day.
We could discuss creating a loading zone.
Well, we have to see what the impacts are.
But that could come to traffic and transportation. But you should bring.
Okay, I'm just gonna keep us moving here.
Another committee is bleeding in.
Last comment online, Robert, I know this is your second time speaking, so if we can just condense this down to a minute to wrap
Like
up.
that term.
So my turn? Yes, sorry. I wanted to come back to one of the questions. Sorry to try to get more information on it, but I understand this is about the potential in the future change of the use of the site. I understand it's currently not contemplated. I understand that to use it as a safe haven is not structured for that, built for that. But if the if the DHS representative could just say, like, how would that happen, and would there be advance notice, a long-term advance notice, or if there was a change of use of the site, how would we learn about that and find out about that?
Thank you. That's a very good question. What if the city decided that the programming of this was no longer needed? We have tons of housing and employable women can live wherever they want, but we have a serious drug addiction problem. What if the city wanted to change the programming of this
We would
shelter?
inform the community board, I believe 30 days in advance, but most of the time we do it we give much greater notice. So we would definitely be in contact with you all, let you know if the population changed. And if capacity change and the needs change, you all would probably know based on news coverage. But we would come to you and let you know when and why the population has changed.
And in your familiarity with DSS and DHS, and I think maybe you can speak to this too, how often does that happen? I mean, has that happened where you change the programming?
It happens.
It happens.
But not often, right? Because these, most of the time they have 9-year leases and they've started with the population. And so we're not eager to change the population, but it can happen. So I want to be real about that, but we don't anticipate that in this situation.
Did you want to add anything to Sarah? No. You did say before that if there was a
It's
change.
not happened in my personal experience at any of the places I've worked.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Our public commentary.
Great. I want to thank everyone here who came out with your questions, with your concerns, for the respect that you've shown one another, and the representatives that we have here from DSS and from Project Renewal. Thank you all for your time. And if there are other comments or input that you'd like to give, I invite you please to do so by email. We're now going to go into business session. Everyone who would like to stay is welcome to stay online and in the room, but we will not be hearing public comment anymore. Yes.
Just a question before we move to public
Yeah.
session, because there are a few members online, if they had any other comments.
Members of the board?
Yes, board
Yes, of
members.
course. Are there any
There's
CB2 members?
Eugene and Susan Kent, and I think, is he still there?
Yeah,
he's fine.
Yeah, I'm just hiding behind this.
Anyone on the board? Eugene, did you, no, nothing?
No, I'm fine. Thanks for asking.
All right, anybody else?
But did you ask if I have anything to say?
Yes, and Susan, who's on the line.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna participate as part of whatever larger discussion we have, but I encourage the board to, I actually have no questions for the.
Okay. We'll go into business session unless there's anyone else who wants to say anything.
Yeah, I don't think, Susan, we didn't hear from you, so I assume you can bring yourself up.
And thank you also for your forbearance in keeping your comments short. I know how frustrating it is, but it is kind of great that it's 8:45 and we've been able to get to a very hot topic. All right, thank you. We'll say goodbye.
No questions from you, Susan? Okay.
Nothing.
We'll say goodbye to Eric. We'll say goodbye to the two of you. And if you guys would like to stay, welcome to stay. You can also just walk out, whatever you'd like to do. We'll take 2 seconds. I'll fill up my water bottle and we'll come back into business session.
Both online and in person.
So much. I crushed that.
That was a lot of power.
Yeah, it's just so much cooking. I mean, it's my own personal notes.
Oh, these are
Yeah.
personal. Okay, I thought you were doing it for Suzanne.
Yeah, I mean, I can share it. I don't know that, it's like chicken, birds, word Jenga.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming
Thank you very
tonight.
much.
Thank you for sharing all of your thoughts.
But I think,
Very good.
Good job.
one thing we can get into the habit of doing, or should ask Carter, is do like the Otter AI notes, or just, you can always.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Carter sent me the Otter. Carter, that was so much fun, that thing you sent me. I haven't even gone through it. The Otter thing.
AI creates notes out of the.
Yeah, it summarizes like the key procedures and the key themes, but if you want like the details.
My meeting, we just need a little break, so now we got it.
Yeah, I don't keep this. I actually.
It's a little weird because depending on how you.
That's tomorrow, so we just leave it on the table.
Respond in a different way.
Or did you sign the bottom of that?
Okay.
Like objective.
All right,
So
I'm
we'll
gonna
start in 2 seconds. Just wait for everyone to settle down, take
Okay.
your time.
What was it?
Jean's got a.
Yes, okay, yeah. It was,
So I should
I'll be
take
home in about an
notes.
hour. Okay,
Take
bye-bye.
notes. Can you pass me one of those agenda sheets? Because I didn't bring any paper. All right. Thoughts,
My grandson
responses?
Is it my?
How old is he?
He's 15.
All right, thoughts, reactions, responses, what do you want to do? Let's hear.
That was just very well.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, well.
Very informative.
Yes.
I think that we should have a report that expresses some of the updated community feedback and changes. But it doesn't seem substantively different enough to demand a different resolution.
I do think that people raised some relevant concerns, especially related to building code. So it would be good for us to just recognize that those are open questions that we'd like them to address, and like some of the use of the space. And I think those are legitimate.
Absolutely.
Ones for to us include in the report.
I mean, I was struck by how many people brought up what they seem to consider more pressing concerns about drug use and selling in the neighborhood. And I don't know that it's directly related to the shelter, but I think it's, maybe Eric brought up, it'd be a good time to press that stuff.
Right.
And I don't know if we want to say anything about that.
It's kind of
I think
apples
it's
and
a-
oranges because
Yeah,
these
go
are, I mean, it's sort of disturbing in a way that people would sort of assume that women who are capable of working, who simply don't have a house, suddenly become like this, oh, they're drug users and fentanyl users. Like this is not the population that's being screened to be at this place.
Yeah.
So you're
No,
kind of throwing everything at it.
Yeah, no, I mean, if they're concerned about, I don't think they're concerned directly that the shelter's going to increase that, but that they're concerned about this other stuff. It's really, to me, it was like, why are you talking about this? We're talking about the shelter.
And I didn't make that connection. They think the women are gonna be involved. I made the connection that they're really worried about the neighborhood.
And maybe that's for
Conversation
another.
we've been having for like
But
2 years.
maybe that's for, that we should put a placeholder and then have a topic, a conversation.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it was more that came
Yeah.
up somehow.
Yeah, and if we add that context, I think we would also want to add context about rising inequality, the lack of housing, basically how economic conditions have also kind of created a larger problem for the community and why this is so important.
I would second that discussion of housing has only gotten progressively worse over the last 5 years, and put in some of those statistics.
So we also need to say how almost to a person, they said that we like this idea. This is great. Let's make it even better. But nobody is, I mean, we have to reiterate that for the general public.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, no, Carter, go ahead.
Since say Susan Stetzer, I lived in the same sector as Project Renewal, so I'm one of the only community board member who attends the sector meetings. So I'm in that with Susan Stetzer. I really go to the meetings every 3 months and have direct experience. They are very good at coming, participating, addressing issues. And the fear that people's concerns will be unheard is not realistic because they're there and they will evaluate the sincerity of the complaint and the issue that's creating it. And my experience is they seek that out to some extent. And mind you, the sector meetings are a circle out, right? They're not the immediacy. That's where other people can go, but they come and listen and they go to those meetings. And that's the type of, engagement I think that is good to see. And as Susan had said, there've been some uses at the 3rd Street Men's Shelter and Kenton Hall, but they've addressed all these issues through this very proactively. And I think that not to diminish people's concerns, but the reaction and addressing them is there. And that's always the most important aspect, right? They can't control the problem necessarily creating itself if it's related to an individual, but they can be a part of a solution, and they regularly are. And that's important because there's not a direct correlation, but that's what
It is important.
concerns are, like
You're afraid,
so, and I just speak from personal experience on that, and that's, and also having for a little while, or for a number of years, having a women's shelter next door, which was also disappeared, the impacts are not the same as large congregate shelters, which are the main intake where you just get assigned. And that's it's important because this is a direction that people probably are, like you heard, they've screened them in a very good way. And that's important for people to know.
I would say also at Paul's Place, there was a lot of neighbors opposing it. There was a lot of strong opposition among the immediate neighbors. And I think that has quieted down quite a lot because of the responsiveness of CECS via the CAP.
I just might contradict myself, and I'm sorry. Rachel. He was saying that we should use this as leverage. Do we want to say, while we're very, we're supportive, we're not doing a resolution, right? We're just gonna.
My vote would be not to do a resolution. That's one of the topics for conversation this night.
I was just going to jump in. I wasn't around on the board for the previous resolution.
Right.
And it sounds like this is an ideal situation for the community in terms of the types of residents and the way the shelter is going to be operating, the quality of the operator. And so this, in terms of being able to help the women that are going to be going into this shelter, and supporting it as a board, I'm definitely in full support of it. And I'm not sure what the difference is between a resolution or a report reaffirming our previous resolution. But yes, it seems like a terrific opportunity for us to continue to support this shelter.
Thank you.
So I was just going back to Rachel's comment. Whatever we do we want to use it as a way of leverage and saying, well, we really support this. What came out in the meeting is that there's wider problems. Almost perhaps we could, in our statement, use it as leverage to get more attention on the other things.
I think that would muddy the waters.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know what, I don't know, where our reports go. Who reads our reports? I don't know.
But it was interesting that it came from this gentleman who knows the system.
But let's presume that our elected officials are reading our reports.
Yeah.
I think that to voice what we have heard expressed about the other issues in the neighborhood absolutely deserves a place here. It has come up as part of this discussion. I think we're talking about not writing a resolution, so we don't have to take a position. We can just share it. And I think whoever chooses to read it will get it.
Perhaps what we could say, if we don't want to, we could just say a number of other pressing concerns were brought up by people without saying what they are, and say that we would hope to look into these at a different and a more appropriate.
We can say what they are. We can say what they are.
Well, I think that makes it.
No, but you're saying it's.
I think really that if you conflate, if you talk about this and then talk about that, people are going to mistakenly think that we thought this was causing that.
Yeah, so I agree. Don't say what it is.
To be said in
That
the
issue's been
same.
addressed as a mayoral task force that's been formed because the Sixth Precinct Community Council has been taking the leadership on this. And so that's
We've certainly
being
raised,
done, you know?
we did have that policing meeting some number of months ago.
Met with the narcotics prosecutor, and we know that there's a task force happening, and yes, Janet.
So I guess have we all agreed that we're not doing a resolution, but the letter will say, we affirm, we recognize we've already passed a resolution in support of this, and we continue to be in support of this, and these are the questions that have come up.
Right. And the community is still very much in support of it.
And, so it would be a letter, right? Not a
Well,
Just a report.
I personally, first of all, let's hear from Anna.
This is truly just a fact question. It is my understanding that the building has been fire approved. I understand that there are actually maybe Carter, you can offer some insight on this. There's different sets of codes. I do want to be sure that it is up to snuff, and that we have just expressed that we do care that it is up to snuff.
I think we should
I think it
absolutely
is.
express
It is my
that.
understanding that that the building has been
litigation.
approved. This is
But I mean,
exactly, this
I
is
was talking
the
about
nature of the
this before,
litigation, but I do want to
Yeah, I
do feel strongly that it
The
is.
New York City Department of Buildings
Yeah.
regulates these and they say yes or no.
Exactly, right,
And
right,
there's
but I
another
wanna,
layer of
okay.
the
So
FDNY.
perhaps
And
we
also-
in this report say, this concern was raised, here are the reasons why we feel comfortable that the entities that we have approved this thing as.
Yeah, we don't even have to say that we feel comfortable.
We believe it is
Say that we have been told that
Exactly.
it has been approved by the city, by DOB, by FDNY, by the state, by, by all these various, and then,
My understanding.
and if someone is concerned that there is funny business going on in their departments, they should absolutely take it up with those departments. I don't think that's necessarily related to this project,
I have no
but
insight into that. What?
no insight.
Sure.
Zero insight into
I think
that.
one more points to make in the report would be good to I did generally feel like there was support, but I think what's critical is for Project Renewal to have that ongoing community interaction and conversation. So that if and when things come up, there is a medium for those things to resolve. That is critical for a lot of the community to feel heard.
Well, there's a requirement that they have a community advisory board. I also think that it would be wise of them to reach out to some other local institutions, CBOs, to have conversations with them. But I'm going to guess that the electeds would do that, that the electeds would bring them in and do a neighborhood-wide meeting, and we will certainly have them back.
It's kind of too bad that it sounds as if this group of women are being held to a set of standards that I hang out in front of my building and talk to my neighbors, people hang out on their front stoops. Are these, that they're going to be under this microscope if two women are chit-chatting on the front steps? That's wrong. My neighbor plays loud rap music.
It's tricky, I think that it's hard for people
100%.
to, it's hard to.
We don't have to grapple with.
No, I know, I'm just making that
And it sounded like a
observation.
lot of the rules were also set by the DA, by
Yeah.
the Department of Homeless Services.
Yeah,
And I think that there's a sensitivity to what the spillover effects. I think that's true.
But there's eyes on a street, it could actually inversely make the street safer.
Yeah, I feel like that's actually
Yeah,
what
the
happened on 14th
perimeter
Street with Paul's Place. Like having especially on that strip right between 6th and 7th, that it's like not many businesses that are open at night. And there is like a lit door per security person sitting right at the front of Paul's Place 24/7 with a door that opens. Right, like not a locked door, a door that opens. And I think it has changed that block. And I think it's something to be said of like the eyes on the street and the fact that they're thinking about, I see their security plans as a big positive. Like it's helpful to have several people there at all times and multiple staff, even when everyone's sleeping. Like that is an overall net benefit.
I'm also encouraged by some other examples that have happened. I know this happened at Project Renewal in Susan's district, and also it happened at Paul's Place, that there were security concerns and the operator applied to the city for more funds for increased security, and they got them. So it's nice to see that the city also responds to that, has responded to that.
I do think overall though that it was a positive sentiment. It was like positive with conditions. But there were few comments that were outright opposed.
I don't think
anybody.
I think a lot of people have mixed feelings about it, and I think that it's fair for us to reflect.
And I think that the condition of the building might be an outlet for voices.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
I don't want to presume what people.
Well, that's an interesting.
We can take them at their word.
The building you occupy, the work has to be finished. And that was a concern that people said about the building and that there were violations, et cetera. The opportunity for change, as with almost anything, is when things are corrected, right? And changing uses, and that's when funds are available. And the landlord here is doing that work that would remove those exceptional issues. And the concerns were raised with those positive steps forward, which you were raising, of improving fire safety, and was used as a criticism when it's actually a step in the right direction.
Maybe,
Right, and so I think that you start to, the building itself will not be an issue on the block because all these issues will be resolved, so you don't even notice it unless there's an objectionable activity, which is most likely not gonna happen. So it fades in to the background as opposed to being the building that has scaffolding forever, or is not fixed, or is an eyesore, or nobody's cleaning up, or all the litany of things that we hear when buildings don't have somebody regularly using them. So.
I think we can wrap this up.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Great job.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes, I need a drink. It was so good.
That was so good.
It was good. People were good.
Yeah, we have pretty good.
Did we stop the recording?